Jensen here. Today for our lunch, early dinner, because we're going to a baseball game later, we are going to be making some mushroom and onion soup with some sourdough bread and some Scotcheroos on here. So we've got a baseball game, and we always like to eat up a little bit before it so that we're still gonna get hot dogs and everything like there, but it kind of holds them over to make it past the first inning on there. So we're going to take our sourdough out here, and I'm going to flip it out onto my parchment paper here. I'm going to get these. I needed to bake these up too. I'm hoping they bake up beautifully and great. I fell asleep one night when I meant to shape them up, so they got a longer proof, but they were still within that normal window of proof time just on my top end part. So we're going to do a crisscross on here. And then, there we go. And then we'll just do a little simplicity. Got my little, realize I need to put one more over here. And then I like to just change it up. Get our little scoring in. This is what makes your bread look bougie. Okay. And we're going to pop this in my Dutch oven. This is one of my big loaves. And I had my Dutch oven nice and toasty heating up. But I was like, I need some sourdough bread. I've been craving it all week. And I had these proofing for the last 2 days. And I'm like, I just need to bake up my bread. It's life crazy. We sit there and it's like our spring break for the kids. So I've got one off with friends. And then the schedule's been so out of whack, I should say. Last night we had soccer practice, and then you're going to love this. My husband does this every so often, but he was like once a decade. It really is. But he was like, I'm really craving some Taco Bell. Can you pick up Taco Bell? And I am not a Taco Bell person. I just is not my jam. But I went and I picked him up his little party pack because, yes, he gets his own little, solo party pack for him. So we grabbed that afterwards. And then I was like, well, if he's doing this, might as well get stuff for us, because none of my children share his true love for Taco Bell. We just let that be his special little thing. But we have that. He had that last night. So dinner was canceled in the sense that we just picked up stuff afterwards, but it's spring break. I did set my timer right. Yep. My brain got 1,000,001 things happening today. It's beautiful weather out, and it's just been kind of crazy, but I wanted us to get our dinner in before we get our go out for our baseball game tonight. Now we will not have a dinner stream because this is dinner, and we will be back later tonight because I have a couple things I need to bake up because I'm going to be touch and go this weekend. This is ODP weekend, which is where my daughters have their Olympic development team. They're on it. So they made like a spot on it, and both of them did. And so they have this like weekend long training about once a month, unless we're out of town for a soccer tournament or something like that. So we'll be kind of go. So tomorrow we'll just have like a dinner kind of stream. But then Sunday, because it's just a half day for the Olympic development program, we will have a nice double stream day. But just kind of, spring break is wearing down, and it's just been crazy, but fun. There always never seems to be enough hours in the day. And then of course busy. I ordered groceries to be delivered because I do love good old Amazon Fresh. We're fortunate we live right outside of a big city, so we get it. And my delivery window, then so how you always get those delivery windows down, and they never come at the beginning of your delivery window. It's like the last one. So I still have a bunch of groceries I still need to put away, but we did a little video because everybody loves our grocery haul. So we'll have that short out for you guys to kind of see what we picked up this week for it. It was just a busy day. We had, like Terminex come out because, they do their little pest thing. And then we had our HVAC people out to do our spring tune-up. It was just an appointment day. I'm going to get my onions caramelizing because we're doing this kind of, it's like a merge between a cream of mushroom and a French onion soup on there with some little meatballs in it. because it's just a simple and delicious soup. And then there's meatballs, and it works well with the sourdough bread. And it's just I was really craving a creamy mushroom soup, but I wanted it to be a little bit more than just mushrooms. So we're going to get 3 onions here because you need a good onion base for it, because that's really the only aromatic vegetable that's going in here. We have the mushrooms that will lend a different flavor set, but this will help enrich the broth. And then we're going to make some lovely kind of pork meatballs that we'll use a little bit of green onion in them, but kind of keep their flavors nice for the soup, just to add a little protein in there as well. But you could totally skip that out if you wanted to. Okay, we've got 3 onions here, and I'm going to start to caramelize them, bring them up, because that's going to give us, take a couple minutes to get to it. So you're not used to a twist off top like this. Get our oil in here. I'm going to use around, let's squirt more, around a tablespoon and a half. And we're going to get these, that's the wrong one, these starting to caramelize up. And then we're going to make some Scotcheroos, because as you know, I've been working on my cookbook, and we've been getting it through there. I've kind of got all of my recipes selected and doing the table contents. And now it's kind of going through and be like, oh, can I get a better picture of this? So I realized my Scotcheroos picture that I had on there for when I made my recipe card a while ago is when I had the blue and green Rice Krispies. So they look a little crazy. And I was like, oh, I should just make these again, personal favorite treat as well. But I was like, I need a better picture. And what excuse to make something, not that I haven't made these recently. I made them not too long ago. But I want to get a picture of it where they're cut up so you just don't see the chocolate top on there. So we're going to make some of those and kind of get there. But let me give my onions a nice little toss in that olive oil, kind of get them coated up. And this, I will say, because my mom's, the baseball game, she's coming over, she's going to love this soup, because this is one of her favorite soups too, or a variation of it. Let's get our base made for our meatballs. I realized I forgot to set out 2 slices of bread, but I did pick up more sandwich bread for this. So I normally make all of my own bread for the most part, except I always buy sandwich breads just because it's really convenient with making like kids' lunches or having a soft bread around for making your meatballs. Although I do have a good white bread recipe that I make. But soft bread, I'm using 2 pounds of ground pork, so we want to use it, nice soft one. We're going to soak this with enough cream to make it where it will turn into a nice paste, but we don't want it too mushy. And I realized I didn't set out my cream. Let me grab my cream over here. So I told you it's been a busy day. Busy. Although it's nice. It always, when you have the kids, like it's spring break, I don't have to wake up super early for, to get like kids ready and stuff for school, which means I end up sleeping in about an extra 2 hours, which trust me, I love. But then I realized those 2 hours, I'm very, very busy during those 2 hours, because it's not just like making kids lunches, but I do like, some of the little household chores, doing a little pickup here, starting laundry. And then I realized that I don't actually do any of that when I sleep in. And then it's like, I don't have enough time in a day, but I will not trade in sleeping in. I enjoy nice sleeping in. We have kind of my husband and I kind of have this rule or this trade-off that during the school week, I will wake up for the kids, get everything, take care of that, and he gets sleep. And then on the weekends, he lets me sleep in for as long as I don't have to do something, as late as I want, which really wins on my thing, because I sleep in way later than he sleeps in for it, like, because he's already up by like 8 o'clock on the weekdays. So me like sleeping until like 9:30, 10. But it's a perfect little trade-off there. And he'll watch the kids and kind of get them all taken care of during the weekend. So I get that. And during holidays. So like spring break really wins in my favor. We've got our 2 soggy pieces of bread here. And then I'm going to add in 2 eggs, because again, it's a slice of bread and an egg per pound of meat, and we're making 2 pounds of meat. And then we're going to add in some fresh herbs and spices, I'm going to use a little bit of onion powder, around, teaspoon and a half to 2 teaspoons. Do a little bit of black pepper. I'm going to do my dry herbs, and then I've got some fresh ones. We're going to add in about a teaspoon of black pepper. And then we're going to add in around 2 teaspoons of garlic salt. So a couple of good shakes here. And then I'm going to add in some fresh thyme and some green onions, and then maybe a little bit of herb de Provence for them. For the thyme, I'm throwing this up. We're going to just pull the leaves off and sprinkle them in here. This will give us nice little aromatic, like nice herby flavors to it. You don't need a whole lot because we're keeping them whole, so when we get them, we'll get a nice pop of it. I'm going to say around a teaspoon to a teaspoon and a half of the fresh. If you don't have fresh, you can use dried and just keep it at around a teaspoon. Get a couple more. Fortunately, there's really no great way to get your herbs off other than to kind of hand pull them off. But thyme's a fairly easy one because I just kind of grab at the top and then just slide it down. Okay, I think that should be good. Maybe do one more. They really packed. I got a lot of fresh thyme in this bundle. They really packed it in. Okay. So we've got our fresh thyme, and then I'm going to slice up some green onions to add in here. These are 2 pretty big size green onions, which are probably more closer to 4. I'm going to slice them down the middle so they're not so fat, and then we'll mince them up and add them in there. But I'm going to get this nice little stir, and then I'm going to turn my pan down to about a 5 on here. Okay, we'll cut off this bottom part. Oh, stirring those onions really gave me a nice little sting in the eye. So I'm going to just, again, slice these right down the middle. That way I don't have these like really huge pieces of onion in my bit of my meatballs here. So we'll give these a nice little mince up. And this is going to add a great little fresh onion flavor to the meatball, which is going to go well with our mushroom and onion flavors that we're working with. I'm going to do a couple little slices over. And we'll add them into our base. And then we're going to work on making our panade. So I'm going to just work in here with one hand, and we're just going to squeeze all of this mixture together to make a nice, really herby paste that we're going to work our pork into. So just kind of squeeze that soggy bread through your hands until you've really mushed it up well, because you don't want any big chunks of bread in your meatball. But I find using like bread soaked in milk gives you a really tender meatball. It's not going to be spongy or dried out. It's kind of my favorite way to make meatballs is with a nice, lovely panade. It's actually really the only way I make meatballs. I used to, back in the day, used to do the breadcrumbs, but I don't do that anymore because I found that breadcrumbs make them drier and more spongy. And I always wondered why my mom's, Swedish meatballs were so good. And she always made a panade with it and then also added some mashed potatoes in it. And they were always the best moist meatballs.
Marianne sent you a gift. You had ridiculous laughter.
Well, thank you, Marianne. We appreciate that. Okay, now that I've got this fairly much into a nice little paste here, I've broken them up. I'm going to add in my ground pork, and then we will get this going here. I'm going to just keep my hands since we're all going to mash it together. All of my kitchen shears, I said we're busy, are dirty. I've been doing a lot of gardening and stuff like that. So I've got my backup little kid scissors. Almost missed a whole meatball worth in there. So I've got 2 pounds of ground pork that we're going to add in here. There we go. We're going to mash these up. I think the onions are getting the cameraman. They are strong today. We're going to work the panade all the way through the ground pork, and then we'll roll these up into little meatballs to have just a nice, lovely meatball to go in our soup, which will just kind of works really well. I like the pork because it gives you a really tender meatball, but anytime you put a meatball in a soup, it's going to stay nice and tender because that's that broth.
Paula sent you.
Well, thank you, Paula. We appreciate that. Here we go. So I'm just, again, the same way I made that panade where I'm squeezing the mixture through my fingers. That's going to allow all of those herbs and that base to completely mix through. And you'll know it's mixed up as once it's kind of, you've got all, you don't have any like whiter parts or of it. It's all mixed through. Okay. So here is our gorgeous panade with our fresh thyme, onions, and base for it. Okay, let's roll these guys out into our little meatballs here. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually put a little bit of olive oil right here so that I can have kind of a smooth base in my hand. Now that my hand, and that way I can dip them in. But pork, like ground chicken, is a slightly softer meat. Has a little bit more liquid in it, so it doesn't roll out as smooth as if you're using a beef or even a lamb so much. Beef is the one that's kind of holds the best. So just adding a little bit of things so that once it starts to get a little sticky on your hands, just pat your hands in it, and it will allow you to roll really nice and smooth meatballs.
Can you go over the mixture one more time?
Yes. So we started out by making our panade using 2 eggs, 2 slices of bread, and then enough cream to make the bread soggy. And then I added in garlic salt, black pepper, onion powder, and then fresh green onions and fresh thyme to kind of season these up. So they're going to have a really lovely, more delicate, fresh onion herbs flavor to it, but will be scrumptious.
Mary sent you some gifts.
Well, thank you, Mary. We appreciate that. We're going to get these guys rolled up and bake them. These are pork, which means they have a little bit higher fat content, so they will shrink up a good amount for it. They have good like extra added liquid in there, so they do contract in fairly well. But you don't want to make them too huge because, you're going to be having them in a soup. But I don't want to roll them out too small either because I don't want to do a whole bunch of extra rolling. Here. These are very kind of the flavors I picked are similar to my Swedish meatballs, but not quite. For the Swedish meatballs, so these I put fresh green onion in, but you use sauteed minced up onions that have been like caramelized, and essentially you do an onion per pound of meat. So it's a lot of onion, but it gives you such a great flavor. And then you also add in a boiled mashed potato to your panade as well. It just kind of holds it together. It's a very unique meatball, but they're so good. There was the ones where growing up, we really only ever had them at Christmas time on our Swedish smorgasbord. Now I make them a couple of times a year because we really love them, but they're just, like my recipe that I got from my mom, which was from her mom. And I still remember making them with my mormor, which means mother's mother in Swedish. And she would make them. And back in the day, she would just, to taste the seasoning on it, she would just take a bite of it raw and eat it and be like, yep, oh, that's good. Or I need more salt on there. And I was like, crazy. But, she's like 94 and still around. So obviously not that crazy. Okay, get these guys. And then once we kind of get these in the oven to bake up, And we'll cook these right underneath our, once we turn our oven down to 450, I'm going to bake this right under our sourdough bread. And these will take about 10 minutes to bake up. So they don't take a whole lot. They're not super big ones. And at a nice high oven, they'll cook pretty fast. Okay. I've got enough to make one more with these little scraps. And then I'm going to have to, I always end up stealing from a couple of the big ones to always make one more. Okay. We've got our meatballs down, so I'm going to go give my hands a quick rinse. And then we'll give our onions a nice stir. See how we're progressing with the caramelization. This is one where you essentially are going to cook the onions and the mushrooms, saute them for a very long time before you add in the broth. That's just something you do at the very end of it. So I'm going to set these over here. We'll pop these in when we take our sourdough, when we turn that temperature down. Okay. Get our onions here. We're getting a nice, starting to get a good caramelization on it. So I'll give this a quick little stir. Now don't add any more ingredients until all of these are nice golden brown. Now while we're waiting, we're going to make our Scotcheroos, which again, these are my favorite and delicious. We're going to use 1.5 cups of corn syrup with 1.5 cups of sugar, and we'll mix that with about 2.5 cups of peanut butter. So it's a good base, but it's going to hold all of our Rice Krispies together, and it's going to make these the most peanut buttery deliciousness ever. And you actually use this instead of marshmallows, so it kind of has a nice kind of base on it for it. So I'm going to add this in. I have come to the realization that this little bottle here is 2 cups of corn syrup. So I'm going to use 3/4 of it, and that way I don't have to measure it out. And then eventually I'm going to get to it where I'm going to have 3 bottles. Okay, guys. Got to just use my teeth sometimes. I can't get it up, my fingers. I make these so hard. Almost.
Do you have a question? Do you have a menu plan for Pie Day?
You know what? I should do something for Pie Day. I should make like pot pies and little mini pies because I love pies. I remember we're going to go because I heard our oven beep. It was for my Algebra 2 class. I think I was in 10th grade and I took Algebra 2. And the teacher created a Pie Day event where she made everything. She did like all these candy bars and she like took the time to paint over them and make them like say pie instead of a payday. It was Pie Day on there. I'm going to turn this down to 450. And then what we're going to do, okay, I hear you. We'll open this guy up. I'm going to let me put these meatballs in real quick. Again, I've got my rest of my groceries I got to pop away and put away. Slide this underneath here. We're going to take the lid off of this and then we'll bake it for 20 minutes at 450. Hopefully, it looks like it turned out pretty good. Again, this is the one I said I fell asleep and it had a longer proof, but it looks like it's baking up beautiful. Sometimes when you overproof a loaf, it will spread out and won't have the structure. This still has the same great place, but this looks like it's going to be normal. 20 minutes at 450 on there. Okay, let's get our Scotcheroos going. We're going to melt our corn syrup and our sugar together. So I'm going to use, again, 3/4 of this bottle because this bottle has about 2 cups in it. It's just easier to do this. It's okay. This is one where you don't have to be a complete exact measurement. Close enough is good. There we go. That's about it. So we need 1.5 cups of corn syrup. It's filling up a little bit more. You got to wait for it to settle down. It's like, because it's a thick liquid. So once I get to about right here, I know I'm good. So 1.5 cups of light corn syrup. And then this is the only time I use corn syrup for the most part. That and my Swedish pepparkaka, which are Swedish gingerbread cookies. And then we're going to do 1.5 cups of sugar. And this is going to create the sticky base that holds our Scotcheroos together. We're going to heat this up until it comes to the sugar has dissolved into the corn syrup and you have a quick rolling boil. Then we will mix in 2.5 cups of peanut butter. So this one, we're going to get it going. You're going to just keep your heat over like a medium. It's really important that you don't overcook this part, because if you do, you are going to have crunchy Scotcheroos instead of nice, chewy, delicious Scotcheroos. So it's important. You'll know when it's ready is when it kind of goes clear a little bit and then has a light bubble to it.
For the non-Midwesterners, what is a Scotcheroo?
So Scotcheroos are, the best way that I can really describe them is they're essentially kind of like a peanut butter Rice Krispie treat, but no marshmallows. You make this instead, which is kind of the same thing as a marshmallow, just deconstructed. And then it has a chocolate and butterscotch topping on it. So you got the scotch right there from the butterscotch. And then I don't know where the roux part, but you know, Midwesterners, we like to do things a little bit different there. But I swear, every Casey's gas station, every Hy-Vee, you can get a Scotcheroo. At Iowa State, where my husband and I went for undergrad, they had them in their dining hall. You could buy them in their little cafes. They're just so good. But they're outside of the Midwest. I swear nobody's ever heard of them. Anytime I buy the ingredients for them, they're like, "Oh, are you making Rice Krispies?" And I was like, "I'm actually making Scotcheroos." And then I end up having like a 10-minute conversation with the the checkout lady at the grocery store about my Scotcheroos and how they're so good. And I will tell you, these, I'm not gonna lie, they are my favorite dessert or treat, whatever. Anytime we go to the Midwest, and it's not all Casey's, like Casey's down in the South doesn't have them, the gas station, but up there they always have them in like a little cup on the side that you can buy in there. But every time I see them, I get them, and we'll stop at Hy-Vee just to get them as well, because they're just so good. Okay, we're gonna slice up our mushrooms here for our soup so we can get these sauteing here, and then we'll add them in here. I've got about a pound of mushrooms, one of those big containers from Costco, that I'm going to slice up here for it. Now, mushrooms, when you cook them up, they are going to deflate once they let out their juices and stuff like that. They actually end up getting a lot smaller. So it will start out pretty big in here, but then it'll go to about halfway through the, pot. And some of these mushrooms, these are baby bellas, but these are this is like the biggest baby bella I've ever seen. But I guess it's a Costco baby.
Maybe they're just bellas.
Yes. Well, the big portobellas, because, baby bellas are like the small version. The big ones are like really flat and top, which I like portobello mushrooms, but I like baby bellas better. And I honestly don't know enough about them to know whether they're actually two different species or if one is just a young form of it or not. But they have a very different texture and kind of even a coloring and flavoring to them. So I'm impartial to my baby bellas. I think I'm going to leave, since these were very massive, I think that might be good on there.
People say they are the same.
They are? Okay. I always just assumed they would be, because why would you call one a baby if it wasn't truly its baby? But they are very, very different in flavor and texture. I find that the bigger bellas are much like chewier and tougher on the sense. They aren't as soft. But I guess it's like lamb and sheep, Everybody loves lamb, but nobody wants the mutton. We're giving this a good mix around. Again, I have my heat on nice and low so that it doesn't, we don't want it to boil too fast. These are going in here. We've got a nice caramelization. I'm going to slide these to the side because I want to get some fresh garlic in here as well before we add those mushrooms in. I finally restocked. So I don't have to peel my own garlic. It's the simple things in life. We're going to do a nice, good, kind of, small handful. It's going to be around a tablespoon once we have it minced up here. But this will add some great flavor to our broth base of our soup as well. Here. And get these guys minced up for it. And that way they can start to kind of get a little quick caramelization on them, let out their flavors, and then we can add the mushrooms in. But I do want the garlic to have a minute or so in the pan with the onions before I add the mushrooms in. Because once you add the mushrooms in, the mushrooms will start to wilt, let out their natural kind of juices, and you won't get as good of a saute on them.
Are you streaming tonight for dinner?
Not for dinner. This is our kind of our dinner. We have a baseball game that we're going to, but we will do a late night because I have a couple things I need to prep up. I'm going to prep up some sourdough bread. That way I can shape up some loaves and make on there for it. But I have a couple things because I'm going to be kind of gone a lot this weekend for soccer. So I want to make some snacks and little treats for the boys and everything to have while I'm out for it. So no dinner because this is our dinner, and then we will eat our hot dogs at the baseball game here. This is for our Scotcheroos right now. We are melting our sugar and our corn syrup together. Again, once this comes to a nice boil, it's just a really quick boil, then we will add in our peanut butter for this. But don't forget about this. Don't overcook this because if you do, you're going to have a crunchier Scotcheroo instead of a nice chewy, delicious Scotcheroo. Okay, while we're waiting for that, let's get our chocolate kind of melting for our next one. And let me grab, I'll just do it in a big pot here real quick for it. And then we will get, we've got our meatballs. We'll take those out in just a minute or two. On there, we'll check on them. But I'm going to make a quick kind of double boiler right here to melt my chocolate and my butterscotch together. This will be the topping that will go on our Scotcheroos. So I'm putting in about an inch of water here. And you can use a smaller pan, but this is what I have. I'm going to get that boiling. Let me grab a metal bowl out. You can use a metal or a glass bowl for this. Make sure it's wide enough to go on top here. Perfect. And boom, you've got a double boiler that requires no extra specialty equipment other than a bowl and some water and a pot. I'm going to, for my top, you can either use like 2 cups of chocolate chips and then a half a cup of butterscotch chips. I have some melting chocolate that I want to get rid of, which will be perfect to go on the top of this because melting chocolate is really great for any of those things that you want to coat. Don't ever sub in melting chocolate for chocolate chips. It melts faster and won't hold itself in the chocolate chip. So we're going to do a whole bag of melting chips. And then I've got some butterscotch. You can go around a half a cup or so. I've got just a smidge in here, so we're just going to do a little bit. Use up the rest that I have. One thing about butterscotch chips, not all butterscotch chips are created equally. So I find this is the Target version, Good and Gather. It's a milder butterscotch chip than the Toll House. Toll House is a really strong butterscotch flavor. So I always say kind of work with it until you've got the right combination because I'm a person who likes more of a peanut buttery, less butterscotchy flavor on my Scotcheroos, but I want a little bit of that butterscotch flavor, but not super strong. And so when I use Toll House, I end up using a lot less butterscotch chips because that flavor really is really strong. Let's get our mushrooms in here to start sauteing. So we're filling this guy up, but these will shrink down nice and small for this. And we're going to let them saute until they've kind of completely wilted down. So I'm going to bring these onions, kind of put them right on top and let those mushrooms have a little bit of that bottom of that pan here. We're not going to salt them yet. I want the mushrooms to first sweat out on their own without any help. Then we will do the salt. It just allows them to cook up a little bit nicer. Okay, we've got close to it. You can see right here, this is the little boiling that I'm talking about. You see, it's really hard to see because I don't have a direct light in here, but there's a small amount of boiling happening. That is what you want. Once that starts to happen, wait like 30 seconds, then we're gonna remove it from the heat and we'll add in our peanut butter. Because if you cook it too long, you will turn this sticky mixture instead of a nice chewy base into a candy, like a crunchier base. So I've got this and I'm going to turn the heat off and we'll let that residual kind of going on there. I'm going to slide it over just a smidge. We don't need the sugar anymore. And now we're going to add in the peanut butter. And you can see, even though I've turned it off, it's still continuing to boil here. So when I say remove it from the heat, completely remove it off the burner. That way you're not getting the residual heat from there to make it nice and hot. And we're gonna need 2.5 cups of peanut butter. You're gonna wanna use a good Jif or creamy, sweet peanut butter, no healthy peanut butter.
Linda sent you a gift.
Well, thank you, Linda. We appreciate that.
And do you post your recipes anywhere?
So we do send out our recipe cards for our members a couple times a month on there, but we do post all of our lives, so everybody's able to rewatch and then kind of cook along with me again for the live. I am in the process of working on a cookbook. We are hopefully will be done at the end of the month, at least for the electronic one, and kind of have that out with over 100 recipes. As well as pictures and just instructions on how everything to make everything nice and delicious for it. So, and they're going to all have a little like QR code that will link to a video of me making that recipe. So you've kind of got that extra help on top of that. Okay, we're going to add in 2.5 cups of peanut butter. Again, I just kind of eyeball this because this doesn't have to be an exact science, but you're going to err on the side of having more peanut butter than less peanut butter because that's what makes these so good. Here we go. So I've got about 2 cups in here. We're going to mix it together for this. And then getting peanut butter all over me. I'll mix it up and I always kind of check and see. I love peanut butter. I always say peanut butter and chocolate. They're so good. Give this a good mix together. This is going to make our sticky kind of coating that's going to go on our Scotcheroos, which is going to make these so delicious. And while we're done over here, I'm actually going to move this up to my bigger burner so that it cooks up a little bit nicer here. But here we're going to mix this peanut butter in. And you see how it mixes in there, and it's actually almost making kind of like a taffy base for it and makes a really thick kind of sauce type thing. This, as it cools, will firm up, and it's what's going to hold your Scotcheroo together, and your Scotcheroo won't be sticky. Think about how Rice Krispies are made. They're soft and gooey when they're warm, but then they firm up and hold together. So this is our perfect little base, and we're gonna make we'll add these in here. And then I'm going to add in our Rice Krispies. Let's see what does this say on here. I think I have exactly what I need. You need about 9 cups in here, which is going to be this entire whole thing on here. But I'll measure it out. And it's okay if I have a little bit less because that just means I'm going to have more peanut butter gooiness. Always err if you're going to run low. Run low on this versus on the sauce because I'd rather have more peanut butter base than anything. So we need 9 cups of Rice Krispies. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and just a little shy. I told you I was going to use all of it. I was going to say that's 8, and we're going to have extra peanut buttery ones on there. I tell you, it's because the boxes don't hold as much as they used to. We're going to go with that on here. But as I said, skimp on this. not on this, because this is what's going to be really good. Before I mix that in here, let's give our mushrooms and our onions a quick stir here. Get this base kind of going. As you can see, their mushrooms are starting to wilt down a little bit more and kind of get them moving. Let's go grab our meatballs out of the oven because they've been in there for about 10 minutes on there, so they should be just about done. Probably closer to 15, but meatballs are one of those things where it works. Beautiful. Look at these gorgeous, delicious meatballs here. Beautiful. I've got a nice little touch of golden on the top. For them, if you want to check your meatball, you can always give them a little tap. As long as they're firm, they're cooked all the way through. If they're squishy, then you need to cook them a little bit longer. But these are perfect. We'll let them cool a little bit, and then we'll throw them into our soup. Again, most of the time for this soup is actually spent sauteing and cooking it up, and then we add in our broth. Now we've got to finish up our Scotcheroos. Here is our beautiful, kind of like our peanut buttery, taffy, sticky base, whatever you want to call it. It probably has a scientific name. We're going to add this in here, and you're going to coat these up. So these, I like to say, there's a lot of peanut butter to ratio, but that makes them so good. And I will say my version of a Scotcheroo is very different. Not very different, but I add way more peanut butter base to Rice Krispie base because I really love that kind of consistency, the chewiness, and that beautiful flavor.
And way less butterscotch.
Yes, way less butterscotch. So mine really hint on the peanut buttery. Now, I was always saying when you go up north or up to the Midwest, you have Casey's Scotcheroos or you have Hy-Vee's. And I find that Casey's leans a little bit heavier in the butterscotch and Hy-Vee goes a little bit more into the peanut butter. And my version goes really into the peanut butter and less so into the butterscotch. But you see how it kind of coats it up and it's holding everything together. You need to make sure you mix these ingredients together while they're still, warm so that they hold up well. But they're so good. So we've got these kind of coated up. I'm going to give my chocolate here a nice little stir because it should be getting close to it. Beautiful. We'll melt those around, give them a nice little mix. And that's that melting chocolate, which means it's going to melt a little bit nicer than chocolate chips on here. Butterscotch tends to take a little bit longer in the melting process, so you're going to have to sit there for a little bit longer. Let's get these guys tossed.
Do you have a good French onion soup recipe?
I do have a terrific French onion soup recipe. That's actually going to be one of the recipes in our cookbook on there. I have several videos of me making it. This is kind of like a hybrid between the two of a mushroom soup and a French onion. But I do have one, and it's one of my favorite soups. And I actually make meatballs with mine just to make it a little bit more hearty for some of my more meat-loving family members. But you can definitely sub them out. But it works well. And then I'll take sourdough bread and I will toast it up in the oven with some cheese on it to do that like little cheese croquette on top for it. Okay, before we press our Scotcheroos into our base, we'll get our sourdough out in just a second. I'm going to take a 9 by 13 inch pan and I'm just going to spray it down with a little bit of oil here. And then we'll pop these in here. I want to get them transferred here and then we'll push them down simply so that I don't want it to cool down too much because you want them to get into this base before it cools. But just, you can see all of that nice kind of that peanut butter deliciousness for it. Okay. We'll steal a little bite here. Let's grab our sourdough out of the oven here. We did the second bake for 20 minutes at 450. And we have our nice, gorgeous little thing. Whew, got a little steam in my eyes there on there. So I'm going to take it right here. And then whenever I'm cooking sourdough, I like to take it out of the pan as quickly as possible so that it stops cooking from the bottom up, because I don't want it to burn at the bottom or get overcooked where you have a really thick, crunchy base for it. Ooh. But again, beautiful golden brown on here. And then we've got our nice little base for it. So we'll have that. With sourdough, you don't want to cut into it for at least 10 minutes after you bake it so it can steam out on there. But nice. My scoring somewhat popped up for that. We got to grab. I'm not going to let any of my little peanut butter bits go to waste. I told you, my favorite. Give this chocolate a little swirl. This is what we're going to pour over the top of our Scotcheroos. Were those meatballs very, very hot? Cameraman did not resist the urge to try a meatball, and he is regretting his choice because they're still very hot. There we go. I'm going to put a little bit of salt in here and some pepper and a little bit of herbes de Provence. And then we're going to get ready to put our our broth in here for this so it can simmer. I'm going to do about a teaspoon of garlic salt.
Yeah, question. Do you use stencils or freehand for your sourdough course?
I do freehand. Anything that requires a little extra work, that kind of goes out the door for me. I just kind of free cut it, but I base it on like a basic little, simple things, because it's just a bunch of little lines. It's cross hatching and stippling and everything you learned in Art 101. We're going to add in about a teaspoon of herbes de Provence into the base of this. And let me grab a little bit of black pepper. But it's surprised what you could make just with a couple little lines. And I will say you do need like a lame, which is what you use to cut it. Like scissors and knives don't work well. You need like a little razor blade for it. But it turns out well. Here's the base on here. We've got those herbs kind of mixing in. And then before we add our liquid base for it, I'm going to kind of add in about a fourth of a cup of red wine here. This is just going to kind of deglaze the bottom of the pan, add a nice kind of rich flavor to it, which works well. If you don't have red wine, you could use like a Worcestershire sauce. Use about a tablespoon of that. It has a little bit more tang, but gives you in that same kind of flavor profile. Here we go. Now, I'm going to press my Scotcheroos down, and then we'll add our broth in here and kind of finish that up. I just don't want my Scotcheroos base to set on there, because once it starts to cool, it will firm up. Take some wax paper or parchment paper, and you're going to press these down just like you would Rice Krispie treats to kind of even them out. And that way you kind of have them compacted so that when you go to cut them, they won't be fluffy and they won't fall apart. And you want to do this while, again, it's still hot, so it kind of moves nicely. And then you have that beautiful base there, but look at that peanut buttery caramely topping, or just going to be so delicious. And then we'll put, once our butterscotch chips have completely melted, we'll mix it in here. As you can see, the butterscotch chips take a good portion of time more than the chocolate on there. Okay, let me grab, we're going to add about 4 cups of liquid into our base here. So let me grab a little Pyrex container. I'm going to do 4 cups of water, and then I'm going to add a nice heaping scoop of beef bouillon. You could also use vegetable bouillon for this if you wanted to keep it a vegetarian option and then skip all the meatballs for it. But that beef bouillon is going to give you that nice kind of flavors that are reminiscent of a French onion soup in here, and it's just going to work really well.
I have a question. How many rolls of parchment paper do you think you go through in a month?
Oh, you know what? If I were to buy the regular ones from like this grocery store, I'd probably go through 3 or 4. A lot of times I go to Costco and I get those big, huge ones that have like 5 times as many as what you can get at in the store. And I go through at least one of those a month. And I also buy the sheets of parchment paper, but a lot because I love parchment paper. I I still remember cooking cookies on a baking sheet without them, and it is just so much easier. Parchment paper is your friend. Um, so if you haven't started using it in your baking and cooking, do it. Trust me, you'll never go back. There's only a few things that I don't like to cook on parchment papers, and it's like home fries because I like how the metal crisps them up. But everything else, if I can, I'll put them down for it.
And do you have a preference, white or brown?
You know what? I typically buy what's on sale, but brown parchment paper allows you to cook at a slightly higher temperature. It's a difference of between 25 and 50 degrees, but brown allows you to do kind of that 500 for an extended period of time, or white is 450. But if you're just doing a short period of time, the white can work. It's just more likely to burn and then eventually catch on fire if you leave it in there too long. Okay, we've added in a big heaping scoop of beef bouillon. I'm going to add in the rest of our water here. We're going to bring this to a nice simmer. And then I'll add in a splash of cream once we get a nice simmer to it. And then we'll add our meatballs in and some fresh green onions on top of that. And then I'll add in a couple bits of fresh thyme as well. But this is just going to be so delicious for it. Okay, let's get a few sprigs of fresh thyme in here. Then we're going to pour our chocolate. Looks like it's fairly good. We're going to pour that over our Scotcheroo. And then hopefully by then we'll have a nice simmer on this. Because again, most of this cooking time is actually in the sauteing of the vegetables and the onions. You know, I don't like to let it simmer too much afterwards because then it will make your onions less caramelized and more wilty on here. We're going to do a couple good things of fresh thyme.
So yeah, would this be a good soup to partially blend it to make it creamy?
You could do that. I wouldn't because I'll say if you like your mushrooms in a puree base form, but I like this one where my mushrooms are more of a whole base for it. And then I add a fraction of the cream. Most people think that when you make a creamy soup, you need to have a whole bunch of cream in it. A fourth of a cup to a third of a cup will give you that great creamy flavor. I think most of the time people put way too much cream in. And you don't need to have that much in there to get that creamy flavor for it. So I do a lot less on there just to get that flavor for it. Okay, let's add a nice little taste. Delicious. I'm going to turn that up. Let's get our chocolate base over these. The butterscotches are just about there. And then I'm going to actually put on an oven mitt to hold this because this pan is nice and hot. And when I pick it up, it's going to waft some steam through. But what I'm going to do is I'm kind of smashing those butter chips down to allow them to kind of melt into that chocolate a little bit better. Now you can go thicker on the chocolate if you want to. I find that these are already very decadent as they own, that you don't need to do it. But I've also seen them with a good huge chunk of chocolate on the top. But I find 2 cups is really good for this of the chocolate chips. We're going to spread it out. And then I'm going to move it around. I did use melting chocolate chips today versus regular ones, but for this, they'll firm up nicely. They just won't be as firm as a chocolate chip when it firms up. And then we've got our butterscotch chips in there. Again, it's, my ratio is 2 cups of chocolate chips to a half a cup of butterscotch chips, but you want to change the amount of butterscotch to how much you love butterscotch. If you love it a lot, put more in there. If you are like me who love the hint of it, do a little bit less. And we're going to just spread this over, and then you can see those butterscotch chips are still in there, but they'll bring those flavors out all the way to the sides on here. That's some of my kids' favorite part is to eat the top off first of these. And then you're going to let it, don't put this in the fridge to cool. You're just going to let it sit on the countertop and let it cool on the countertop until that top has firmed up enough. Putting it in the fridge is going to change up the consistency of your peanut butter base. It's going to make it more crunchy versus a nice chewy base. Here we go. And then you give it a couple good shakes. This is where you'll get that nice, you'll get rid of any of those smooth lines for it. But there is our delicious Scotcheroos. Okay. We're about to get a nice simmer on our soup here. So we can finish that off in just a second. I'm going to get a couple green onions sliced up because I always top the soup off with some fresh green onions at the very end. It kind of plays nicely with the caramelized onions, and it's just that the double play of the onions. It works well. And it adds a nice pop of prettiness to it. So we'll get these in there. Then we'll add in our meatballs, which are going to be lovely. A splash of cream. I don't add in my cream until the very end because you don't want it to kind of curdle or get a little beady. So add it in towards the end. But we're looking pretty good here. I've got a nice kind of slow simmer forming here. I'm going to move this right over here because we're done with that. And beautiful. Let's get our meatballs in there and then we'll do our cream at the very end. So these are our lovely pork meatballs that we have with green onions and fresh thyme in there. And it's just going to add a nice little pop of flavor to it.
You have a question? Could you use chicken bouillon?
You could use chicken bouillon. It would give you a lighter stock. Traditionally with French onion soups, you have a beef bouillon, but chicken would also work wonderful with it. Sometimes I prefer a lighter broth base to it, and I think that's kind of the difference is it. But yes, as far as it's a little bit of a flavor profile difference, but not much.
Oh, Brenda sent you again.
Well, thank you, Brenda. We appreciate that. I'm going to tuck those in, and then I'm going to add in our splash of cream here at the very, very end to give you that nice kind of creamy, mushroomy onion soup. Again, not very much.
Judy sent you again.
Well, thank you, Judy. We appreciate that. Again, I do about 1/4 of a cup to 1/3 of a cup because a little bit of cream goes a long way. As you can see, just a splash of it already has changed that broth color, significantly. And that way you're not adding a bunch of empty calories in there because a little bit really gives you that texture and that flavor. Okay. Beautiful. I'm going to try a little taste of this. Perfect. And then because our sourdough has had a chance to sit, we're going to do, we'll cut open that, but I'm going to add in some of my green onions right now. And then what we'll do is I'll save a little bit to garnish with at the end, but this will give you this nice pop of green onion flavor on there.
What type of meatballs did you add to the soup?
These are my homemade pork and kind of green onion meatballs. We also use fresh thyme in them. So they have just a really lovely herbally base for it.
For someone with a mushroom allergy, would potatoes be a good substitute, or what would you do?
So if for a mushroom allergy, I would honestly probably just make a French onion soup for this. And you could make it a creamy French onion soup if you really love that creamy base for it. Mushrooms are kind of a tricky beast. They're hard to mimic the texture and the flavor. As far as the texture, you'd probably be better with a zucchini because it has similar to that texture, but the flavor is so unique on its own. So let's cut into our beautiful sourdough right here. It should have about 10 minutes, so hopefully we steamed it off here. Gorgeous. Look at that beautiful crumb on there. You can see that steam still coming off, but I'm going to cut it all the way through and get a nice big chunk to put on our plate here. Just get this hot. Ooh. And then let me hold this right here, guys. Because we want to have fresh bread with our soup. Beautiful. Ooh, it's still very, very hot. Okay, as you can see, the steam is coming off, but look at that amazing, beautiful sourdough. Let's get ready to serve up, guys, because it is lunchtime. Dinner time, I mean, because we've got our baseball game to get ready for here. Let's grab our plate. And then I've got some fresh Parmesan cheese to go on top of the soup because it just adds that perfect little bit of cheesiness, which you get with your French onion soup, but we're not doing a full French onion because we're doing a creamy mushroom French onion soup. Let me grab a ladle. And let's see if I have a little pat of butter here. Okay. For lunch today, we have our homemade French onion and creamy mushroom soup. We caramelized up 3 onions and then we added in about a pound of mushrooms, a splash of cream, and then we made these lovely homemade pork meatballs that have fresh green onions in them, fresh thyme, and a lovely panade. We're going to top this off with some more fresh green onions and then a good helping of Parmesan cheese to kind of give you that nice cheese melt that you get with a French onion soup. And then, beautiful, good amount there, guys. And then we have our fresh sourdough bread that we just baked up. And I'm going to give that a nice, good spread of some butter on here as it melts there. I'll put a little bit on this side. Gorgeous, because everybody needs some butter on their sourdough bread. And then for dessert, once they have completely set up, we have our Scotcheroos, which are kind of like a peanut butter Rice Krispie treat, but no marshmallow, with a chocolate and butterscotch topping on the top. These are my favorite dessert, and I'm so excited. I can't wait for them. Well, guys, thank you so much for joining us here. Don't forget to like and subscribe. We try to do live cooking shows every single day, kind of show you what we're making for our family and hopefully teach you guys something along the way. Again, we do upload all of our videos to the link on our page. So if you ever want to recreate any of these recipes at home, you can just go to our page and search for what we made. We've got our creamy mushroom and French onion soup with our meatballs, our homemade sourdough bread, and our Scotcheroos. And you can always watch and cook along with me again. We also have a link to our Amazon storefront that has all of our different cooking gear and gadgets in it. I've got my knives, cutting boards. I finally added in my cool little oven mitts in there, as well as all the other kind of gear and stuff that I use in the kitchen I have in there for you guys to check out. But again, thank you so much for joining us here. Don't forget to like.